The Resident Evil movies have always kept me guessing. I never played the games, but watching this movie series grow across most of my life always kept me intrigued because I never figured out exactly what they are. And I wanted to finally explore these movies, so I sat down with my friend James to binge through all 6 and see what we would discover. And I'm sorry the audio and camera framing and focus isn't great in the first part of this video. We were pressed for time and the new mic hadn't come in the mail, and I'm just one man, okay? So I hope you enjoy our exploration of the Resident Evil movie series as much as I enjoyed, well, none of the movies, really. Okay, so that was not as bad as I expected, I guess. I don't know quite what I expected, but it kind of both matched and, I mean, in many ways surpassed my expectations, because I had high hopes for the dog kick.
Much better than what I remember.
I really don't think any scene in any movie is funnier or more effective, frankly, emotionally, than the dog kick.
I'm both surprised but not surprised that this created an entire franchise of movies.
This movie has some of the lamest, like, zombie stuff I've ever seen.
They were pretty weak zombies.
Some of the worst action movie one-liners I've ever heard.
When I get out of here, I think I'm gonna get laid.
She is gonna get laid.
She's gonna get laid eventually.
She's gonna get so laid. I guess an interesting question would be, is there anything you can point to that you can say you liked, and don't say the dog kick? The dog kick doesn't count. That's transcendent.
That's transcendent. What they did with the dogs and how the dogs looked actually was, like, the most, like, correct from the games.
Right, okay.
Everything else, not. Like, actually, I think I realized this first movie doesn't have any, like, named characters from any of the games at all. I think the second movie starts to do that, but the first movie doesn't. The closest they came was the weird husband, not husband relationship of Spencer. Because in the game, like, the mansion that they're in is called the Spencer Mansion.
What's weird is you would think this is a game that would translate well to movies, in the sense that you've got a pretty solid horror premise in there.
From my research, I believe there were 4 mainline Resident Evil games that came out before this movie did.
Really?
And they decided to go with Alice, which, did they even name her in the first in this movie? Did they call her Alice at all?
Did they say her name at all?
I don't think they did. It's only revealed during the credits of this movie.
I mean, I guess they wanted her to be, like, mysterious, like Man with No Name-y kind of thing.
They probably want to be like, who is this woman? Could it be a mainline game character?
Yes. I get not wanting to have to be, I guess, restrained by the game's story and characters, but you gotta replace it with something interesting.
Like, that's why people are going to see it.
Yeah, and, I mean, there was the dog kick. I would not trade a single second of this movie if it meant we lost the dog kick. So, 5 stars, this movie wins.
In my personal opinion, I enjoyed that much more than
that
the first
was
movie.
much better than the first movie. I think the biggest improvement is that it looked and felt more like a real movie and not like a bargain bin, straight to DVD piece of garbage like the first one did. Mm-hmm. I'm kind of torn because I'm not really a big fan of zombie media in general, but the setup for this is a setup for a solid zombie movie, even with Alice doing her basically just superhero thing.
The one thing I will say is that there was not as good of a dog kicking scene, but they did hit a dog with a pan at one point, and that was kind of funny.
That was pretty good. The problem is Alice. I think every problem I really have with this movie stems back to Alice. One, Mila Jovovich is just really boring.
They did something to me.
It's sort of akin to Underworld and Celine, where it's more about it's a hot woman doing cool things than any sort of character. I think the lack of tension is also a real problem, especially in, like, this zombie setting where there's supposed to be, like, danger around every corner, but Alice is just invincible. She can face anyone, she can do anything. At the end of the movie, she's seemingly a god, and she can
She has, like, the physical powers that make people bleed from their eyes.
She can just do anything. So what's the point.
Yeah.
I mean, this movie was chock full of actors who I didn't expect to see, like Mike Epps. When Jared Harris popped up, I got very upset because I always get very upset when Jared Harris shows up in movies like these. But hey, man's got to work. Yeah, it's just kind of like average, I guess. It's just right down the middle.
I mean, like the weird cuts were still there.
Yeah, no, it was over-edited to hell, but I mean, most of what was happening seemed cool, and I was kind of into it, and it wasn't boring. I'll give it that. The first one was much more boring.
It was much more boring.
Yeah. What would you give this out of 5 dogs hit with pans? I would give this 2 dogs hit with pans.
Really?
Out of 5, yeah.
Honestly, for me, I'd say 3 dogs.
3 dogs?
Yeah, 3 dogs hit with pans.
Okay. There was no weird decapitation in this. I missed that. The early 2000s did love them a weird decapitation. You've got this. You've got Underworld. You've got Equilibrium does it too.
Can we get the dog getting kicked and the dog getting hit with a pan side by side and compare real quick?
Okay.
Show me what you can do, hottie.
Yeah. This one was, I guess, almost good. I would call it almost good. Like, it's the closest of these 3 thus far that has come to being a good movie. Individual scenes in this, I'd be like, oh, I could see that scene in a better movie. But the context around it, made it much stupider. In a weird way, I'm kind of hoping that the other ones get crazier, because I've heard they're all insane. Like, I feel like what I always hear is these movies are crazy, but so far it's been kind of boring and just, like, diluted versions of movies I've already seen. So I'm kind of hoping it picks up a little bit and gets into a more specific kind of crazy after this. I don't know if that's a good thing to wish for, because I feel like I may immediately regret it, but we'll find out.
Well, it was like a mixture of it felt like the end of a trilogy, because it brought back like at final boss battles from like the last few movies, and then they ended it with a cliffhanger.
Yeah, they resolve all the side character stories by killing them. I mean, Alice gets the survivors away. There is hope for the future, and she faces down the final boss, essentially, right? If they cut off that little epilogue, this would be the end of a solid... No, it'd be bad. The end of a bad trilogy. Like, I almost felt disappointed by this one, because I wanted more craziness. I wanted more stupid stuff. I'm sure, but still, like, this was just kind of a middling action sequel. It was just fine. Like most of the second one, just fine. Just fine.
I think from this movie, like, onward, I believe there's a very bad habit of not explaining what happens at the end of the last movie to the beginning of the next one.
That makes sense.
And like how they got there, and kind of just like filling you in with a very brief like 1-minute scene that they just talk about it, and then it's over and done with.
I think it's pretty easy to look at the movies and the games as very separate entities.
Oh, yes.
Like, these are not adaptations, I would say. At this point,
oh, God.
They're not adaptations. I mean, I know nothing about the Resident Evil game characters, but I'm just guessing based on how they're treated in this, it's that usual adaptation trick of, we already have a story, and we'll give this character we already have this person's name. And that's all they did.
That's what it feels like.
Yeah.
What's your name? Kmart.
I have, like, vague ideas about where the future movies go just from stuff I've absorbed through osmosis on the internet. I'm trying to figure out, like, where this is going, and I have no idea. So a part of me is excited because it starts off, it's zombies. Okay, zombies. Now zombies and monsters and superpowers, and now it's post-apocalypse zombies, monsters, superpowers, and clones. It's like, what's the next step, you know? I'm excited. I'm intrigued. I'm scared on a certain level because I know it's not going to be good.
I'll be honest. I enjoyed it more than Extinction.
I enjoyed it more. I would not say it was better.
I feel like they knew what it was, kind of.
That's generous. This was shocking. This one was honestly shockingly bad. I had seen this one once before. We got very intoxicated and watched it. Blurry memories at best, but I do remember spending the last half hour or so just very confused and screaming. And the same thing happened this time because
there There was another kick. A dog was involved, but they didn't kick the dog per se.
I truly, every time, I've actually watched that scene on YouTube a few times, and every time I watch it, I am shocked that it keeps happening that way. So this movie begins by undoing the end of the last movie entirely. So all the clones are dead, all of Alice's powers are gone, which you would never be able to tell because she still acts like a superhero the whole time. She basically has the same abilities. Yet this was a mess, like a real disgusting mess of
it was
a film.
Just a bunch of stuff jumbled together.
Like, I just don't know why anything that happened in this movie happened, why anyone agreed to do another one, why...
There was no reason for it.
No.
No reason at all.
No, this movie does not justify its existence in any way, shape, or form.
Minus the cliffhanger at the end of the third movie.
Oh, you won't have to wait that long, boys. Because I'm coming for you. And, I'm going to be bringing a few of my friends.
Yeah.
If that wasn't there, then...
But that's the first 5 minutes, and then they do nothing else with it.
That is true.
So, what was the point?
I ingest you. I gain control.
I think Wesker is the best character I've seen in any movie ever, and definitely the funniest.
I want to see a rom-com with Wesker.
I want to see Wesker in a Disney Channel original film.
You should have brought more.
I don't know if at this point I could not call myself a fan of these movies anymore.
I am actually a Resident Evil fan.
Because I'm kind of getting into it. I'm kind of starting to feel these movies' vibe. Stop that. I don't...
4 movies in.
I don't like anything that's happening, but I'm in for more.
That's
like
true.
I'm
We
not.
have 2 left now.
The idea of watching more Resident Evil at this point doesn't fill me with the same like chill of danger that say I felt when I was going through like the Underworld movies. Yeah. Like I'm racking my brain trying to think of any logical through line or anything to emotionally connect to in this movie. And I have no idea what any of it was or why it happened or who wanted this. What's crazy is that this was movie number 4. And we've watched all these movies in the span of the last 2 days, and I still had no idea what was happening for, I'd say, 98% of this movie. It can only be uphill from here, surely. But I feel like somehow this series has the potential to be worse and better at the same time, because that's kind of what every movie has been. What does the Umbrella Corporation want? What do they want to do?
Obviously, they don't make umbrellas.
They just build... That one was better than the others, I think. That may have been the only one I liked. I kind of liked it. I didn't love it, but I kind of liked it.
It was, I think, the coolest looking one.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
It all took place in an underground facility instead of just, like, ending up there.
Yeah.
Which is nice.
I mean, it starts off on a really weird note because it picks up directly where the last one left off and then introduces us to a whole new cast of characters and a whole new location and brings back old characters. How did Wesker come back? Why is he alive?
Questions. Why are you asking so many questions?
I don't know. I just feel like the movies should address it even a little bit, considering he died many times in the last movie. I wouldn't say it felt any more dumb than the last few, but there was, I think, a real effort to keep things moving at all costs, like not to get too slow and meander along. They've given up on any sense of like characterization. It's just action people shooting things. The closest they come is Alice's weird clone daughter thing she has going on, and that was honestly just kind of a weird choice. I don't know why they did that. I feel like there isn't as much to talk about, I guess, in specifics with this one, because it's just a lot of action the whole time, and the action's fun, it's watchable, it's got some energy, the effects are still a little shaky because you can tell they don't have that much money, and they're pushing the limits of the budget, but they pull it off for the most part, I'd say.
Yeah, I would say I am disappointed in 2 major things. The first being that Kmart did not return.
Yes, R.I.P. Kmart, I assume.
And also, there's no dog kick.
Not even a dog.
Not even a single dog.
Yeah, no dogs.
There was no dog in this one. I appreciate that they brought in like more video game characters like Leon and Ada and Barry. Kind of random, of course, but like That's how it is.
It's the same kind of thing in every one of these movies where the characters aren't really the characters from the video games. They look like them and they have their names, but they're really just there to watch Alice do cool things.
There wasn't much progression story-wise, like in like the world building, because it was all about Alice just getting out of this facility.
Yeah. Every one of these movies kind of has like insane, crazy new plot developments. And I felt like this one was kind of lacking that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nothing really happened. Alice was in a place and had to get out, and she got out. And then they promised in the next one something cool will happen, which is usually what Resident Evil does. But still, you want to finish this off?
Yeah, let's watch the final chapter.
Let's find out how could it possibly end. I have no idea what's going to happen.
No, I'm hungry. I haven't eaten much today. Let's do it.
Okay.
Is that as bad as I mentioned?
I don't even know where to start. So it starts right where the last one left off, ? Because the last movie ended with all the main characters from the games and Alice and everyone, they were all at the White House, and it's like, this is the final battle, it's gonna happen. And then this movie opens, and I guess the battle happened, and it didn't go well, because Wesker's gone, and everyone's dead? ?
All the named characters from the last movie are dead besides Alice.
And they never explain what happened, or even reference them ever again. Dr. Isaacs apparently has been the main villain all along, and he's back, and it turns out the last one of him who died was a clone, and there's a bunch of clones running around, and they all think they're the real one. But the real one is frozen underground because it turns out... There's going to be a lot of it turns out because this movie has about 90 twists that...
And retcons from the rest of the
that
series.
have nothing to do with anything beyond this movie. So we do learn the origins of pretty much everything, which includes the T-virus and why it exists. So it turns out Umbrella was like, hey, the world's screwed, global warming and war and all this... So let's just start the apocalypse early, and we'll release the T-virus, and then we'll wait till humanity is wiped out, and then we'll start fresh.
It's been done once before, with great success.
See, this is the thing.
And the thing is, the entire board agrees to it somehow.
That's a good point. My point was, how is the Umbrella Corporation even running? Because they seem to be the worst run company in all of history.
It's true.
They devoted so much money to building these giant underground bases, which are again never talked about, to plan the release of the T-virus. This was the last movie. In the last movie, they said they were going to sell it as a bioweapon. It's the kind of twist where it sounds like a twist, but it makes everything else make so little sense that it doesn't really function as a twist. It just ruins the story.
Yeah.
There have always been clone Alices. The Alice we have been following, even though we have seen many clone Alices, this was also a clone.
Also, the real Alice's name is Alicia.
Yeah, and so the little girl who the Red Queen computer program is based on is the original Alice, and it's Mila Jovovich in terrible old age makeup. I honestly can't, like, as this was all happening, I could not believe what was going on. The rest of the movie is honestly not worth talking about. It's just zombie post-apocalyptic action like the third one was. The last 20 minutes of this movie broke my mind so deeply.
And it took so long to get there. It felt like it was taking
Oh
forever.
yes, it's punishingly long. It's only an hour 40 and it feels 4 hours long.
You're fired.
Albert Wesker dies because his arm gets chopped off and he bleeds out. Even though he survived a nuclear blast, shots to the head and the body, and a whole bunch of other stuff.
Wesker is killed by a door.
He's killed by a door.
This is where it all built up to, was all I could think. Was this was it. This is what it was all building up to. This was, I think, the most confusing movie on every level, I would say.
In my opinion, it's the worst of all of them.
I think I agree.
Even Afterlife, it was slow at points, but at least
I think
the last battle was kind of fun.
It's not like these have been years apart in our viewings. We've watched these over the past couple days. We should be able to figure out what's going on. And I feel like somehow watching them in a straight line gave me less information. every movie is directly tied together, and yet none of them line up, and they all feel like the same series and yet a different series. I really don't know what to make of this. I don't know how to sum it up. I mean, the motivations of everyone has changed movie by movie so drastically that I can't really track it, but...
Where'd that girl go? Where'd the girl she wanted to save so badly in Retribution go?
Yeah, where'd Kmart go? I feel like I've been left with far more questions than I ever had going in. I don't know if I was supposed to get any sense of closure from this movie, because I didn't. If one good thing came from this, it's that it got Monster Hunter greenlit. Do you think this movie would be more enjoyable if you knew absolutely nothing about anything about the franchise?
Probably not.
Yeah, no.
What the hell are you? I'm you idiot.
Okay, so it's been 1 week. So it's been a week since we sat down and watched every Resident Evil movie, and what a time that was. So now we wanted to meet back up. You know, we've had some time to sit with it. Because all of these movies seemed so different and so weird, I kind of wanted to see how coherent they would be running in a straight line, and the answer we got is not very.
I think the main difference between the movies and the games, besides everything, is the fact that the games didn't fail because the games changed things up when things were getting stale. Like, first it was just tank controls, and then they switched it up in Resident Evil 4 with like over the shoulder third person, like more so shooting horror. And people loved that. And it worked well for Resident Evil 4, but it didn't do well with Resident Evil 6. And actually, Resident Evil 6 pretty much almost destroyed the series from what I was researching.
I think the point of going through all these movies was to kind of figure out what's Resident Evil's deal. Because I never knew. I wanted to have a clear picture of, like, what is this franchise's tone and what are the driving ideas behind it. And I didn't get an answer because it changes every movie. Every movie feels like a new franchise beginning, even when they loosely connect back to the other ones. They're full of callbacks and recurring characters and whatnot, but they show up at completely random times, disappear and appear from the story at will, have levels of importance that are later retconned to be meaningless. This definitely wasn't a wasted experiment, though. I did have a lot of fun watching through these, mostly with you, because they are a good time to watch with someone, not because of you. Relax, okay? Take it easy, sir.
Wow.
I can't say I was bored, and I was consistently kind of invested in what was going on. Like, I wanted to see what would happen next, mostly because every movie ended with an absolutely insane cliffhanger.
Honestly, the only ones that I felt bored in was the final chapter and the first one.
Yeah.
First one, because like it was first Resident Evil movie, they're trying to find out what they were doing. Like some parts felt like they lasted more than others, but overall still, you know, pretty fun. Final chapter though is one, it was just disappointing from the get-go. With just, you know, expecting something since we watched the other movies. And also there's just kind of boring.
I think that's a really interesting notion, this idea that we had sat through 5 movies that, I mean, we were having a good time, but I was still like, this is all very stupid. And I still found myself kind of disappointed by the last one. Like, I was invested enough that I could feel disappointment. So that's something. Do you think these movies would have done better if they'd gone for a more direct horror experience?
Yes.
Okay.
Pretty much because, I mean, yes, the first and second and third game were like, they were shooters, but they majorly based a lot of it like more so on survival horror.
I can't really fault the first movie for being what it is, for being like a video game movie in 2001, 2002. It wasn't the best era for blockbusters like that. It just wasn't. But what's crazy is that they stuck to that timeline and those characters and that particular branding of this series through to the end. Like, I would have thought you'd see a reboot by the time Afterlife came out. But no, they just stuck with it.
And you would think that with Resident Evil, the game series being so popular, that somebody would want to like remake it.
Yeah.
And yes, they did make animated movies, but those were for the game.
Exactly, yeah. The biggest loss in this series in terms of making the movies like this and kind of going from movie to movie and reinventing it every time is that you lose any real sense of stakes or danger, especially with the villains, because 6 movies deep and a week later, I have no idea what the Umbrella Corporation ever wanted to do or why.
Wesker, he led you all here to Washington. He pretended to give you your powers back, and then he betrayed you.
When you go back and try to like figure out what Wesker was ever up to, you know? And Wesker fascinates me. Wesker first appears to just be some guy, and then in the 4th movie he has superpowers. He dies 3 times in Afterlife, then he just shows up in 5, and then he's back in 6 and he's killed by a door, and that's his character arc. The final chapter was kind of screwed from the start because it's trying to provide a sense of closure to a series that has had no consistency and no real through line, narratively, thematically, character-wise, nothing. It's just every movie is different. I think the biggest letdown of the final chapter was trying to ground it at all.
It's been done once before, with great success.
Because Spencer from the first movie made it happen. Speaking of, he doesn't really go into much besides the fact that he betrayed them. Like, was he still working for Umbrella? Or was he just trying to steal it for somebody else?
Well, he says in the first movie he stole it for Alice because he loved her. That was the thing, right?
We can still make it out of here. Come with me.
Wait, Alice was a clone.
Alice was a clone the whole time.
So who's Spencer?
Spencer was a guy who worked for Umbrella, and he stole the T-virus.
And they had the wedding photos.
Yeah, so they faked this whole backstory with the clone of the head of the Umbrella facility, and for some reason they couldn't just hire another soldier. They had to use this clone. So they put her in this mansion, and then the Red Queen took over the hive, and then the T-virus gets out. But luckily, this clone of this lady who runs the Umbrella Corporation has superpowers now, and then she gets her superpowers taken away, and then she gets them back, but Wesker was only pretending to give them back. And then, as it turns out, the Red Queen is also a clone, but she's not. She was the child version of the original Mila Jovovich, and now it's the clone, and it's the Trinity of bitches, and they're together at last.
The Trinity of bitches.
A theory that's been growing in my head since we watched these movies is that Paul W.S. Anderson just got bored between movies and just wanted to make a different kind of movie. You know, he's like, okay, I'll make a zombie city movie. Okay, I'll make a post-apocalypse movie. Okay, I'll make whatever Afterlife is. I would love to sit down and have a lunch with Paul W.S. Anderson and Mila Jovovich and just talk about from beginning to end, like the process and their thoughts. This is an open letter to Paul W.S. Wanderson.
Do you want to get lunch sometime?
Do you want to get laid sometime?
The two...
I think I'm gonna get laid.
It's a callback to the first movie.
It's a callback to the first movie. I'm not being a creep. I'm a creep. I'm trying to think of a song with like Alice in it that we can like harmonize, but I can't think of a song with Alice in it. She kicked a dog, it seems to me, reminds me of Resident Evil 3. What was your favorite of them? Would you say it was Retribution?
It was Retribution.
It was for me too, because it was, I think, the one that took itself the least seriously. It had the least stupid things going on because it was so straightforward and just, we are in bunker, we need to get out of bunker. That's the plot, that's all you need. I found it difficult to compare this to any franchise, to any other movie series, any other books I can think of, and then it clicked in my head. Resident Evil, the movies, remind me of Riverdale.
It all comes back to Riverdale.
In a way, yes. As we went through each of these movies, I never really had a sense of what the default baseline version of Resident Evil was, you know? Because each movie was so wildly different in tone, style, characters, everything. And I feel the same way about Riverdale, where it switches it up every season. Things get gradually more ridiculous. You have no sense of who anyone is or what anyone wants. They just fulfill various sort of archetypical roles in the story. And that's very much how the characters operate in Resident Evil.
Yeah.
They just kind of show up and do whatever they need to do in that movie, and their abilities, their personalities, everything warps and changes depending on what that scene needs to be. And then by the next movie, the entire timeline could be reset for all we know, because it went from days to months to years. Like, we had no idea how long has passed. And I think eventually, like Riverdale, you kind of just have to settle into the insanity. You know, you kind of have to just let yourself get taken on the ride, because if you try to understand it, you've already lost.
You know what that makes me think of, Ross?
What?
I think you would really enjoy.
I think
the
I know
story
exactly what you're thinking of.
Kingdom
I'm gonna
Hearts.
kill you. It's a wonderful journey this series takes you on. It starts off, you know, this nice, small, contained little horror movie. Then you've got the end of the world goes on. Then you've got, like, mind powers and cloning. And then the villain wants to eat her, and that's the motivation. And then
I ingest you.
you've got a facility in the ice. And then you've got more desert. It's the hero's journey, ultimately. That's what it is right there.
That's the perfect film series.
Yeah.
That you're talking about.
Yeah, maybe talk into the microphone if you want people to hear you. And ultimately, I think the point of the series, which narratively is told to us over and over again, nothing matters, you idiot. Shut up and consume, you sheep. What would you like to see in the upcoming reboot?
Yes.
If that becomes
Okay.
a series?
I don't expect it to be good, but I do hope it's fun.
I'm interested to see what they do, just in terms of, like, it can't possibly get any worse. You know, you can't sink any lower than this. And I say give Mila Jovovich a cameo. What are your final thoughts on the Resident Evil films now that we've seen them all and we've talked about them extensively and we've seen every dog kick known to man?
You know, I don't regret watching the Resident Evil movie series. Do I wish I didn't? Also, no. Do I wish they were better? Yes.
Okay, the first two things you said mean the same thing. Yeah, this was a lot of fun. I'm glad we went through these movies. I'm excited to explore more series in the future, but I think this was a good starting point going into something almost entirely blind. Like, I only really knew these movies through other people online making fun of them, but the actual specifics were all a big blur of Mila Jovovich and zombies and monsters that I vaguely recognized, and I'm pretty sure I played like 5 minutes of 4 on the Wii once. Like, I don't know anything about Resident Evil, and really, what more could you want to know?
Well, you don't need to play the games at all. You just watch the movies, man.
Yeah.
Like, that's pretty much the same thing.
It's a direct one-to-one correlation, I would say.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Screw everything we just talked about. The
Yeah.
games actually are not as good
I
as
think
the movies.
I would argue no one should play the games and everyone should watch the movies.
I agree. And if you sign our petition
Mm-hmm.
to cancel and destroy every copy and online copy of Resident Evil 1, Resident Evil 1 0,
Okay, we don't have to list them all.
Resident Evil 2 Remake, Resident Evil 0, Resident Evil 3 Nemesis, Resident Evil 4, Resident Evil 5, Resident Evil Umbrella Chronicles, Resident Evil 5 again, Resident Evil 6, Resident Evil 7. Also, just so you all know, I'm going to cut my hair in April.
Cut your hair into pieces. This is the end of the video.
Suffocation, no breathing.
I don't want to be crazy, but I'm starting to think the Resident Evil movies were just made to make money.
I will not sit here.
I know,
and
I
listen to
know,
this slander.
I know. You put down one microphone. You weren't wearing a